Is the season beyond saving, or is this a funeral on the 2024-2025 Kansas basketball season? That's the question we dive into next here live on the KC Sports Authority podcast. Whew, and welcome in, fellas, listeners, those live, those watching later. Welcome into our potential funeral. As you can tell, we're all wearing black tonight. JB's even got the black hat on to answer the question of, is the 2024-2025 season dead and over? Is it time to move on, RIP, or is there still a slimmer of hope that Bill Self can figure something out with this squad and get us back? Because it is another disappointing loss, an expected loss that everybody saw coming the second that game started. You knew exactly how it was going to end. Jayhawks fall to 17-8 on the season, way down the depth chart when it comes to Big 12 standings, and everyone's saying, "Is this rock bottom? Is this the bottom of the 6 foot grave? Is this where we go? Do we just throw this team in and start throwing dirt on top?" Um, I'm almost there. And this is probably the most disappointed I have ever been as a KU fan. So for those of you guys joining us, John, thank you so much. Uh, Washed and old is what this season is what John's telling us there. Yeah, just about so. Noah also on there. I'm afraid it's over, boys. I don't see anything telling me otherwise. Any of you that join us today, obviously, comment section is live for you to throw any and every take you have about this team, about this season. If you want to get a toast off to an RIP to the season, go for it. That is why we are here tonight to discuss this. So again, welcome into the KC Sports Authority podcast. Again, if you're joining us live, thank you so much. Hit that like button, that thumbs up, even despite that you want to give the Jayhawks a thumbs down. Give our podcast a thumbs up because
There you go.
I think everyone has been enjoying this so far. If you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and do so. You can also hit us up on any of our social medias at KCSA Pod. And fellas, here's where I want to go next. The last 48 hours, Kansas Twitter has been something. Um, you have seen every possible take out there by every major Kansas basketball writer, analyst, reporter, Twitter page, everything you can think of. We are all chanting the same thing, that the season's dead and gone. And the way that game ended just is a further example of how the season has gone as a whole. We saw another performance by Hunter Dickinson, or lack thereof performance, where there was no energy or fight or effort shown on both sides of the floor. Missed wide open layups. KJ fouls out, even though he actually played honestly pretty decent. One of the few guys with energy. Zeke finally had a decent road game, but we're all just sitting here wondering, what do we do with this team? Is it time to bury the 2024-2025 Kansas Jayhawks? Take it away.
It is. I hate to say it, and I've been saying it for the last couple episodes, but um, yeah, this season is over. I'm not going to assume that Bill Self is over in reality when it comes to the Kansas program, but this is yet another game where it just proves my point a little bit more that Bill Self is not the coach he used to be.
So
He's not.
before
Go
you go
ahead.
further than JB, let
Yeah.
me ask you this. So less than a week ago, just about a week ago, we sat here, had a live meltdown, and there was a certain hot take you presented. And if those of you missed it last week, never got a chance to see it, let's just rewind the tape for a second and see. Because JB, I'm going to ask you a question at the end of this, is if this is
Oh
still how
no.
you feel. So here we go.
I've been thinking about this and it's been brewing for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I'm just watching us lose and lose and lose, and I'm just like, I am saying it now. Bill Self, you're done. Bill Self, I'm sorry. I want you gone. I love you, Bill Self. I'm not gonna pretend I know more than Bill Self about coaching basketball. You're done. Because I can't. I think, Keegan, you alluded to it earlier. He's just softer. He's not coaching with the same tenacity. Right. And it's, to me, it is It's just a different game now.
So that was JB a week ago. JB, the question is, has anything changed in your mind from that take?
Nothing. Not a thing. I mean, if anything, it's like I said, it's reinforced. The the trouble that I have with Bill Self right now is it's just becoming more and more apparent that today's game is not it's just not suited to a guy like Bill Self. I mean, he just can't. I again, I will never sit here and pretend that I could coach the team better than Bill Self, or I'm never going to pretend that I know more about basketball than Bill Self. Bill Self is a god to Kansas, and it's time to just accept the fact that sometimes even a god in basketball has his time, and it's here, man. It's up. He's run the clock, man. It's out, and I hate that I'm even saying this. It makes me feel like a terrible Kansas fan, but it's like it's out of love. It's kind of like when you got an old dog, you just got to put him down. You know, I'm like, and it's I love Bill Self. I feel awful because I feel like this is gonna get clipped and Bill Self is gonna see it. Bill Self, I love you, dude, but it's just what's going on. You have all this talent. You have the arguably the most talented roster in all of college basketball. There's a reason why we were voted to be preseason number one. We have
Never again.
Yeah, well, yeah, I
I
never
hope
want
not.
that curse ever again. I mean, I can say this. At least we'll probably still make the tournament. It's just sad knowing that the standard of Kansas is being a 1 or a 2 seed. Anything less than a 1 or 2 seed is a failure. And here we are on the cusp of basically like a 5 seed. Have we ever been a 5 seed under Bill Self's tenure?
Nope. The
Was it
lowest we've ever
never?
been, the Bill Self tenure is a 4 seed.
Exactly. And so to echo my point in that video, you're done. Like I want to like there's a clip of uh, that Balin chick on TikTok with the Tourette's, and she goes like, "You're done." I don't know. Anyway, I just feel like that's perfect for right now. It's in my heart of hearts. In my heart of hearts, I feel like there's a chance maybe he can bounce back. Not this year, but maybe next year. Maybe. And so why I'm wearing black, why this is the funeral episode is because, yeah, this season is done. This season is done, and it's a shame. I hate to see Zeke Mayo kind of, come to Kansas at the perfect time, have his final year of college eligibility in a Kansas uniform, and then have a year like this. I hate to see that for you know what, and I love KJ Adams, I love Dwan Harris at their core. I love that they play for Kansas across their chest, but even these guys have turned into some of the most hated guys on the team. Not hated, but you know what I mean. It's like they were the crowd favorites years 1 through 3, and now we're looking at KJ Adams and Dwan Harris as being two major parts of the problem. 2 years ago, we chimed and ranted and raved about Hunter Dickinson being the guy that's going to win us back-to-back national championships, and now we can't wait for him to get off the roster. We would rather him get hurt and not Zeke Mayo and sit out the rest of the season. We would rather have Flory Badunga start the whole rest of the season for us, and maybe something would turn around. It's just weird that it seems like the whole fan base is talking about these changes that need to be made. And we all collectively agree that Flory needs more minutes. We agree that Shaquille Moore needs more minutes. We agree that there's certain lineup changes that just can't be out there, and yet we're seeing them. I know Bill Self doesn't give a damn what the Kansas fans have to say, but it's starting to really ring loud, I think, when all the national press is glomming onto Kansas and saying, wow, something's up with this team. It's at some point Bill Self has to listen. That's my take.
Just quick side note, Noah, you're onto something here. I've been actually saying this for a while that this team could be athletically challenged still with KJ at the 5, but they can play fast and aggressive with KJ at the 5. So I'm interested in that. But yes, John, This to me, I told Austin this right before we get on here. I'm starting to come back around on Dewan and KJ because they actually play with heart.
They
I
do.
think I've gotten to the point where I recognize their talent, and I'm okay with the fact that their ceiling is lower and their floor is higher than some. But to me, this whole team has been constructed around going after Hunter Dickinson 2 years ago. And John is right, hit the nail around the head. He has no killer instinct. I said it last week. No drive, no fight, no energy, no passion. I mean, I can think of at least two plays off the top of my head again in this game where Hunter lets a rebound go right in front of him. And Derek Johnson said it on Locked On Jayhawks post game last night, and he's like, unless the ball falls right in front of Hunter, he cannot go get it. If it is
Yep.
anywhere within more than 2 feet away from him, he can't come down with the ball. And once again, we saw a free throw. The worst free throw shooter in the country misses it. Two guys cannot come up with the rebound because Hunter can't go after it. They get the shot, miss again, get the shot, foul again, score. KU ends up losing this game. Um, to me, I'm back on KJ and Dewan. I will take their limitations because of the fight they have. Now, I think there are times where Dewan still. I think like the big one last night was late in that game. You see him smiling over there, talking to somebody when we're down and about to lose. Don't like that, but he is one of the three guys on this four guys. I think there's four guys on this team that play for Kansas. It's Dewan, KJ, Diggy Coit, and Zeke Mayo to most extent. Um, that's where I wanted to go. Is Bill Self. As much as I first off do not agree with JB's take of time for Bill Self to go. I'm still on the side of I think Bill's just done with this group, accepted defeat on it, and is ready to move on. But if we do have a third year in a row of this struggle, then I think we definitely have to question it. But Austin, let me kick it over to you. Thoughts after this game? Has anything changed for you in the last week on your mentality or the outlook for this team?
I mean, not really. I mean, I feel like I've been saying the same things over and over again for the past few weeks. And I mean, yeah, you mentioned the players that actually care about playing, for Kansas across their chest. And it just seems like the entire team, doesn't have that same energy and all that. I was also watching Derek Johnson's thing after the game last night, and he said something about KU looking like a random pickup basketball team.
Yeah.
And I honestly have to agree with that because I don't feel like this team right now has some sort of chemistry. I mean, when we won the national championship, it was it 2, 3 years ago, that team had chemistry. And the big difference is those players or that team specifically, those guys, they played with each other for 3 or 4 years. And right now we don't have any of that because we've been playing all these different transfers and everything. But I mean, the lack of effort last night was abysmal. It really was. And it's baffling to me how Utah just had the type of game that they had. I mean, they were not a good shooting team coming into this game, and we made them look like the 1990s Chicago Bulls. And I feel like
For at least a 15-minute stretch, and then they
game,
came back down to earth, and KU played excellent defense and basically held them to 2 points for 10
they
minutes. We
didn't
couldn't
they
win.
didn't score. They didn't score for 7 minutes in the second half, and we still lost. Like what?
I think they
How,
had.
like
I think
how
if
is
I'm
that
not
even
mistaken, they
possible?
had two different times they went 7 minutes without a basket. I think they had a free throw or two, but 14 minutes without a basket, and Kansas still ends up losing by almost double digits in a game that, honestly, on paper, statistically, outside of the rebounding, which we got to talk about effort wise, KU was the better team statistically in majority of categories outside of rebounding and points off turnovers. Uh, but yeah, I mean that game was the culmination of lack of effort. And I don't know if you guys had the chance to watch the post game press conference. I'm gonna try while you guys are
Oh
talking,
boy.
see if I can upload a clip in here. Um, to me, it was very obvious watching Hunter and Dewan talk post game. And I said this, I think, last week, watching Hunter after the last loss. Um, he seems clueless on what's going on. Now, I don't think any KU reporters are really asking the hard questions, unfortunately. That's been another talking point from the fan base is why are these guys lobbing softball questions without really diving into the hard stuff? And I get why they don't, but someone's got to start taking accountability for this team. And Hunter just kind of just was meandering. Oh yeah, it's frustrating. We got to play better. I got to play better. And you could just look at Dewan, and just Dewan just has this defeated, pissed off look on his face. He's like, I'm done. And I think I'm done with you, Hunter, because once again, your 6-year senior, who's supposed to be one of the most talented players in America, shows no effort. I mean, the guy literally plays with no fight majority of the game. Like I said, he could go for 22 and 15, and you can still count 5 to 10 plays on your hand where he is the sole reason why KU gives up a bucket or loses. And that's why I think, Anthony's throwing this in here about Juan and KJ. Again, I don't disagree with some of what you're saying here. They have limitations. They 100% have limitations. And with the way this group is constructed, the limitations of Juan and KJ are expanded upon because they don't have the guys around them. Juan looked really good on that national championship team because he was one smaller piece of a bigger, better constructed roster. KJ 2 years ago as the starting 5-man as a sophomore year looked really good because the fit around him was great with Jalen at the 4 next to him. This roster construction, as we said every single episode for basically the last year now, is just terrible. And so I think Juan and KJ get the brute end of it from the fan base because yes, when we watch the games, we see the limitations. But I think Juan and KJ are the only two guys, and Diggy, that truly go out there every single game and put out a strong effort. And that no matter what they do is not going to be good enough to the fan base because we're just so fed up. And again, I think it's fair to have that assessment of them, but I think we also need to realize that their issues we knew weren't going to really get better to begin with. And this is more back to coaching and roster construction that, they went all in on Hunter Dickinson and they did nothing else to improve the roster. They didn't even try to recruit over KJ this last year like they could have. Heck, they could have gone back 2 years ago and went harder after a Grant Nelson type at the 4. They could have gone after Cliff Omarui in the offseason. But instead we chose to go all in on that trio. And unfortunately, like we said, that trio just cannot play well together. Individually, I think they are all great individual pieces, but collectively they cannot do anything. Yeah, Dewan at least did mention Kansas on the jersey versus the name. That was something he did say in post game. Thank you for bringing that up, Stan. He definitely said that, and I personally think that he was calling out the guy sitting next to him because I don't think Hunter plays for Kansas. I think Hunter plays for himself and ESPN and whatever stupid podcast he's on once a week for college basketball. Same with guys like Rylan Griffin, AJ Storr. I think are somewhat in there. Now AJ Storr actually had a decent shot. Rylan looked awful, looked lost. This is just a horribly constructed roster that I think hindsight 2020 Bill would have made all these changes we've been talking about, but there's really nothing he can do now. I mean, who are you going to play? You can just go out there and play Raquise Passmore for 25 minutes a game. He's not ready for it. Right now the guys that should play are Juan, Diggy, KJ, Zeke, and Flory. You play that team out there, then guys like Anthony are going to sit here and tell you that Dewan and KJ are trash because they're not going to look good in that type of lineup. And I get it. But man, this is just harsh. Ryan, you threw up here. I wonder if Bill had to say about Hunter coming back or if he has as much. I'm sure that was one of the first conversations they had of if Hunter wasn't going to go pro. I'm sure all along it was they want him back. And I think Bill Self truly believed like they could find something to put around him. But yeah, I think NIL is super powerful. That was a conversation I think we need to have at some point too on the podcast is, and I think I texted this to you guys earlier. To me, it looks like KU is treating the NIL era different than your Kelvin Sampsons. And Austin, I want to give you a minute to talk about that here in a second too. But KU forever has been we're the cream of the crop. KU, Duke, Kentucky, North Carolina are going to get the top recruits year in and year out. Whether you're paying for them legally or illegal, doesn't matter. Those were the cream of the crop programs. Now that everybody can pay, it feels like KU's selling point is, hey, you can come to Kansas and get one of the best NIL offers across the country. Previously, it was, hey, you can come to Kansas, and if you play hard, you show up, you work hard in practice, you practice hard, and you translate that in the court, the fan base is going to reward you. Bill Self's going to reward you. You're going to win. You're going to win championships. Oh, and hey, guess what? Now you can get a great NIL offer. To me, it feels like we've shifted to, hey, come here because we'll get you the best NIL offer. And we've gone away from, we need you to come here and work hard first. And that's what I think has always set Bill Self aside from most coaching staffs is he expects you to come in and work hard no matter what your name is, no matter the star next to your recruiting standpoint, no matter where you come from. It's you come in and you play really hard and you'll be rewarded. And it feels like the last two, 3 off seasons, it's been Let's go get the biggest name, throw as much money as possible at him, and hope for the best.
Man, what I love about that is it just kind of reminds me that like college basketball has now become a business, which is really frustrating to me. Like it kind of always has been, but the thing is now that, like you said, any program can now pay NIL money legally, and I mean it just kind of exposes us. And now here we are. It almost seems like, I'd hate to jump back to this, but Bill Self not being the guy, but like it almost seems like we need someone who's a former NBA exec slash NBA coach, someone that's in the business of actually, paying all their players and et cetera, and is used to it, to be our next coach. Which I still would not know who. If for anyone that is just tuning in, yeah, I'm on the camp of Bill Self needs to go, but then again, I don't know who the heck replaces him. I really don't, and that's the pure definition of being stuck between a rock and a hard place. Um, Earlier, if I can scroll through here, um, let's see, Ryan. I wanted to jump back to this comment here because, uh, yeah, I don't feel bad, or I'm sorry, I do feel bad, uh, putting all this blame on Bill Self. I really do. Um, a lot of it is, I feel like this is his fault
I mean,
because
he,
of,
he is responsible for putting the roster together for sure,
yeah,
but I think he also is going, wow, I did not expect that these guys would be this clueless this late in the season. I mean, again, you listen to Bill Self's post game,
right,
he doesn't have an answer. All he says is these guys got to figure out how to play. I've done a terrible job of teaching them how to win and coach them on how to win, but he's also been like, I don't. There's nothing I can do until these guys figure out how to. I mean, even at Hawk Talk throughout the week, he's been saying how they have maybe 2 good practices a week and then 2 really bad practices where the energy and the effort's not there. That's
yeah,
a problem from the players. He can't fix that himself overnight. Now he can there certainly coach to it, and I still think he gets a lot of the blame for the roster construction and the fact they haven't developed as well as traditional Bill Self teams. But I'm starting to shift some of the blame back more to the guys on the team because there's only, like I said,
yeah.
there's 3 or 4 of them that come out there with the energy. The rest of them don't.
I mean, I would absolutely agree that Hunter, next to Bill Self, is the biggest to blame. If not bigger. Um, Austin, I'm interested to hear from you on Hunter specifically. Am I dreaming, or from the current student perspective? I mean, are students calling for Hunter's head just like all the old heads like me are, or what's going on with Hunter for the students?
Oh yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think a lot of students are done with Hunter. Just being honest. I mean, I really hate that things are turning out this way for Hunter. But yeah, people are tired of him. I just remember being at the North Carolina game, and I forgot what happened, but like there was a stretch where I think North Carolina took the lead like late in the game, and the people next to me, they were screaming for Hunter get off the court. And I kid you not, there were players staring into the student section because they heard those group of people yelling for Hunter
Oh,
Dickinson's head.
no way.
Yeah, it was crazy, but there's 2 things I do want to touch up on just really quick. Number one, I think KU needs to get a GM for their basketball team. Football
Thank
has
you.
that right now. I mean,
Thank
I
you.
think if you get a GM, you could scout the guys that actually want to come here and play for Kansas and not about the money and the NIL and all that crap. Number two, um, uh, Keegan mentioned Houston and them being able to adapt in the new world of college basketball. Here's what I have to say about that. Kelvin Sampson has done an incredible job of bringing in guys, and he's brought in a lot of transfers too, just like KU has. But the difference is he's brought in guys that actually like want to like play for him and play for Houston. Now, I mean, like when you think about it real quick, you're like, who the heck wants to play for Houston, not Kansas, Duke, North Carolina, Michigan State, all these teams? Now, granted, Houston has had a historical basketball program and they've had success, but they have guys that want to play for him and for Houston, and they don't really. It doesn't seem like they care much about the NIL and all that crap, and that's the difference with Kansas. Unfortunately, is the majority of this team they care about all the other things and not actually wanting to come play for Kansas. I mean, now I'm pretty sure they want to, but at the same, it just doesn't feel that way. So, but yeah, we need a GM, and then I think we just need to pay attention to what Houston is doing, because ever since they moved to the Big 12, they've just been absolutely dominant. And some people are like, "Well, this isn't going to last forever. Kansas will be back up there at some point."
I said that.
I really don't know if that's going to happen. I mean, I think they're going to keep it going because Houston is unbelievable.
So, and then jumping back here, Ryan, I understand your point here. I mean, you're onto something, dude. There's something that my dad taught me when I was young, and it was essentially that the answer to all of your big life questions, a lot of times, more often than not, always leads back to money. And just got to follow the money and you'll find your answers to all of your deepest, darkest questions, right? And in the case of NIL, what Ryan is alluding to and what I'm getting at essentially is that, yeah, these companies that are helping pay all these NIL deals toward Hunter and other players, they are paying this money in the expectation that they get this money back over time because of all of Hunter Dickinson's exposure, right? And so these companies are in the business of making money, and if they're paying all this money, if that check has been written, and if Hunter Dickinson is not on the floor, and if he's not getting all this exposure, it really screws them. And so, yeah, I think there is an element. There always should be an expectation that there are people in Bill Self's ear that are saying, you better play Hunter X amount of minutes, right? And then Bill Self,
I mean, Hunter's not going to sit like this,
right?
We know,
but I
it's
would
not
also
gonna happen.
say,
and honestly, Bill has in some games he has pulled his minutes back some, but yeah, I mean, I think it's your point. It's about the money there, which is why I disagree with what Anthony's saying here. That you all say Juan and KJ play for the name on the jersey, and he's not buying it. I don't see any evidence from the way Juan and KJ play that tell me they don't play for Kansas. I'm sure they get a pretty decent NIL bag, but they're not getting what Hunter's getting. They're not getting what AJ Store's getting. I'm sure Rylan got a pretty decent bag, and I never question Juan's effort on the court. I never question KJ's effort on the court. I question his talent, his talent level. But KJ goes out there and busts his butt every single play. He's just not good enough on this roster to make a big enough impact that we need to see. So I disagree. So Anthony, again, put in there. What is your anybody else in the comments too? What is it about Juan and KJ that suggests they don't play for Kansas? Because Juan has, in my opinion, has never not played like he plays for Kansas. I mean, this kid comes out of Missouri, gets under recruited. Mizzou doesn't even want him. He comes to Kansas and has been nothing but an exemplary Kansas guy for the last 5 years with the Kansas name on the front of his chest. So I just don't know where, again, Juan and KJ, they have limitations. They are talented players, but they're just not good enough to get you to the top. They need to be quality role players. And on this team, they can't be role players. They have to be better than that. And unfortunately, they're not.
Well, I struggle with, and this is in support essentially of what Anthony's saying is, I don't know how much this relates, but I'm just going to say this point that KJ and DeJuan have one thing in common that just kind of dawned on me, and it's the fact that they really haven't improved in their senior season. We talk about Bill Self, all of his teams, all of his best players, they seem to have this senior year leap, junior to senior year leap that was just not present with DeJuan Harris. And DeJuan Harris has been the same guy the last 3 years. He's been the same player. He hasn't improved one bit. You name me one stat. Name me one stat that he's better at this year that significantly. I mean, don't give me, well, he's 0.2 points higher. Don't give me but his assists went up by 1. I don't get. 1 assist a game, that's not a big improvement. Don't give me any of that. He is the same player up and down that he has been for the last 3 years. Guess who else has been the same? KJ Adams, dude. And his role has changed. It's been a little bit masked by his role changing over the last couple of years because our team is just weird. But yeah, we even saw success. We had more success when he was at center. We talked about that in the comments earlier in this live. That he was our center 2 years ago, and that team performed a lot better. It seemed pretty weird to me, but these guys are not making the classic senior year jump, and that's really starting to tick me off. And of course, it coincides with Bill Self having his heart issue, and Bill Self just not seeming to be the same coach that he has been. So it starts to really make me think: is it Bill Self? Is it the players? Maybe it's a little bit of both. I don't really know where to go from here, but that's part of the reason why we're all dressed in black and why we are saying this is the funeral of the 2025 season, because it's just done.
So if you've joined late or didn't catch us here at the beginning, welcome in the show. Jayhawk Edits, welcome to the show. The question is it time to bury this team? Is it time to we've dug a hole. There's a 6 foot by 6 foot grave that is ready. The question is it time to throw this team and the entire 2025 season into that hole and start piling the dirt on top? Because where does the season go? KU is 17-8 on the season. They are 8-6 in conference play. And at this point, they have a better chance of finishing in the bottom half of the Big 12, in my opinion, than the top half of the Big 12, which is just absolutely depressing. They are on pace to lose double-digit games, which, again, in the Bill Self era and Kansas basketball in general is not very common, something that we just don't see that much. So, again, to those of you in the chat and you guys on the podcast, where do we go from here? Is this season worth salvaging, or is it time to call it what it is and that the season's a lost cause?
No, but this year is done. Jayhawk Edits, shout out Jayhawk Edits, love you.
Always has great stuff.
I freaking love Jayhawk Edits, dude. I think you're spot on, man. I think next year it really could be his last. I would second that notion. I would say, especially if we end up having a double-digit loss season next year. Oh my God, I don't even want to think about that, but I think it'd be time. The biggest issue, like I said a second ago, though, is who do you replace? Who do you replace him with? I don't know. I went on a rant an episode or two ago about why can't we have John Shire, a guy like John Shire, just come up off the bench and lead this team to victory. I don't think we have a guy like that on our coaching bench, and it's just frustrating.
Let's talk about that for a second, because again, we've had this conversation before.
Case.
I think Case is a better coach than he gets credit for, but this team has way too many coaches. We've said this, every KU podcast over the last 3 weeks has said some form or fashion of who are all these assistant coaches, what in the heck do they do, and why do we have so many? So many that the walk-ons have to sit behind the bench now. They can't sit at the end of the bench. Why do we have so many guys? I messaged, or I replied to Jayhawk Talk on Twitter because he had made the comment that this stuff coincided, the downfall of KU coincided with Bill Self's health, and something about the coaching staff. And I said it also coincides with the addition of Doc Sadler. Why is the former Nebraska Cornhusker coach casting some sort of spell over Kansas athletics in his 3 years he's been here? Because the 3 years he's been here have been 3 of the worst seasons we've had in a long time. And I'm sure it's just a coincidence, but what the heck does he do? He's a senior analyst and advisor to this team. I just have no idea what this collection of assistant coaches does. There's too many cooks in the kitchen. It's time for some fresh juice. When you have former players, Christian Brown, Frank Mason, and Devon Dotson, even in the last 48 hours, are making comments about the effort level of this team, it goes to coaching. At some point, coaches have to get up there on the mic and say, hey, it's our fault that the guys don't play with effort, even if it's not their fault. You got to come out there and say, hey, we've identified that this team just cannot will them, as Anthony is saying, they have nobody on this team that can will themselves to a victory. I get that. That's coaching, part of that's on players. But when you have former players coming out and saying that, to me it says that, whether it's you bring on a GM next year, you shake up the coaching staff, there's got to be something. Because if this was the NFL, if this was the NBA, any other sports league, even if the head coach doesn't leave, there's an assistant coach getting fired. Offensive coordinators being shown the door, defensive coordinator, forget it, pack your bags, special teams coordinator, whoever, you're gone and you're getting replaced with somebody else. And maybe we'll see that this offseason. KU has a very old coaching staff as far as assistants, extremely experienced. I've said it before. I think all those guys individually are quality assistant coaches, but maybe it's time for a KT to retire. Maybe it's time for Norm Roberts to take a step back and bring something new in. Chase Buford was brought into this team. What is he doing? We don't know. So I think there's definitely some talk there with the assistant coaching staff in the offseason. And I know a lot of fans have been clamoring for, it'd be so great to see Frank on the staff. I think he would be a fun addition. I don't know if that's in the works anytime soon, but the one I keep coming back to is I want to see Aaron Miles on this group. Aaron has floated around the NBA, a couple different teams as an assistant coach, as a scout, had some success with the Warriors G League team, some success with Boston Celtics. I would love to see him somehow a part of this group, or somehow we go and get Danny Manning back and we steal him away from Tad Boyle, who could be getting fired after this season anyway. But I don't know. I think assistant coaches are worth a few minutes of conversation. And I think it would be fun to play the game of, what former player or former Jayhawk would we love to see as an assistant coach next year in the event that we get rid of 3 or 4 guys. Same thing with you guys in the comments. Is there a former player that is not currently actively playing that you think would be a great assistant coach on this team?
Gosh, Austin, I feel like all the current KU students like yourself, they probably don't even remember the days of Danny Manning being on staff. Maybe they do. I don't know. But like Danny Manning, man, I would honestly, at this point, I would welcome him back. Dude, not Nick Timberlake. Shut up.
Why not? He couldn't get any worse.
Oh my God. Oh, that's good. God dang it. Jayhawk edit's killing me. But yeah, man, Danny Manning at this point, I've seen him be a head coach, and I was not impressed. But you got to think coming back to Kansas would have some sort of fire to it. I don't know. I would be open to it. I would give him an interview. I'm no GM, but I would definitely give him an interview. Mitch Lightfoot, that's hilarious.
Talk about a guy that does play for Kansas on his front chest, but I don't think Mitch is leaving his international anytime soon. I think it'd be weird. He's not far enough removed from the roster yet to be on the coaching staff, I think. But I think he would be an interesting one down the road. Because to me, the other thing we've lacked since Danny Manning left is big man development. Outside of Udoka Azubuike, and I'm going to actually say Landon Lucas, we really haven't had true multi-year development. David McCormick had some development, but we really haven't had a big man coach because it's been Norm Roberts, who's all of 5'7". So I've always been on the opinion why Wayne Simeon has never been an assistant on this team. I know he's involved in the program. I know he's around. He probably goes to practice quite a bit, but I've always wondered why a guy like him isn't on this coaching staff, coaching the big men, because Wayne Big Dub was one of the most talented postmen KU's had. And I think he could teach these guys a few things about post moves and heart and energy. But I think he'd be a fun one. Yeah, Danny Manning, Mark Turgeon, Jock Vaughn, Stan bringing up all the old names because Stan is an old timer himself there. But love that. I love Jock Vaughn. I think Jock Vaughn's probably past his coaching prime, in the sense of because he's been in the NBA coaching for about 10, 15 years and just hasn't gone well. But I think he'd be another great one to have around. As an assistant, I think if when the day comes Bill Self retires, I do think KU still keeps it in-house to some capacity. And I think you could see a guy like Jock Vaughn, Aaron Miles, or a Keith Linkford end up as an assistant on this team. Paul Pierce, for energy's sake, sure. I think it'd be fun. I don't know.
Nah.
I don't know if that would go anywhere. He has some pretty wild takes on ESPN still.
Mini hot take, JB's hot takes. But I do not like Paul Pierce. You can call me all the things you want. I hate Paul Pierce, man. I'll tell you why I don't like Paul Pierce. It's one reason only. I don't care that he went to Kansas. He's before my time anyway. But I don't like Paul Pierce because he doesn't like LeBron James, and I'm a LeBron James stan. And I will stand by that forever. I just had to get that out there. But it would be hilarious on our staff. Probably not the move. I saw Mario Chalmers also
I think Chalmers would be
here.
interesting. I've
Yeah.
seen since he's retired from playing, he has been more active with camps and a lot of things. I think he's got a great basketball mind. I think that'd be fun. I think it would probably help from a recruiting standpoint too. I think Tyshawn Taylor would be a good fit too. I know Tyshawn's trying to get his coaching career up and running more than what it's been the last couple of years with high school. But again, like a guy like that, I think would not only help with recruiting because he's still young enough to the game and has all these ins and outs with all the AAU circuits, but I think he would bring in energy because he's been here and he's done it. Now it's always frustrating though when you bring in a former player because the expectations have to be high, and if they're underperforming, nobody wants to be the AD that has to fire a former player as the coach. But those would be interesting. Anthony, again, I know you brought this up. I brought it up earlier. This has been a problem for me all season. Bill Self post-game press conferences have been as redundant as all these KU podcasts have been the last 6 weeks. Of the same question gets asked, what do you guys do? What are you doing in practice? And Bill gives the same nonchalant answers, doesn't call anybody out. I'm pretty sure he hasn't even used the word soft yet this year. And if somebody can find that, great, but I don't even think he's used the token, this team is soft. He kind of called out Hunter the other night and basically said, well, he just missed a lot of shots and we can't have that. But he echoed something Diggy said about effort. But yeah, Bill Self press conferences have been a problem. Again, not to rag on all the guys in the media because they have a job to do and they have to maintain good reputation, but no one's really lighting a fire under coach right now and asking tough questions and really asking the questions the fans would love to ask if we could. And I think that's a problem.
Yeah. I love that. I love what Anthony said. It was it's one of those little things you can look at and point to as just how off this entire season has felt. At this point, the season's done. I just gotta say it again. Austin, I feel bad too. I feel like from the current students, I mean, they must be pissed. I mean,
especially after getting called out several weeks ago by Bill Self.
Yeah.
And the energy has been there. I mean, the
So
student section has been there.
Because you're losing.
Now, granted, I will defend Bill Self on this. I think up to that point, the student section has been weak from previous seasons. I think overall, in general, not to go on a huge tangent here, but in general, over the last 7 years, I think the student section as a whole has gotten worse from what it used to be. Some of that being KU taking some seats away to go to donors. I get that. But I think some of it's just a cultural thing that there's a larger chunk of KU fan base now that is in the college age that just didn't grow up with the same passion most of us did coming to Kansas. So I think that's a little bit of a problem. But since that comment, man, they have shown up for sure, and now they're not being rewarded for that energy. Time for coverage.
No, I mean, what was I going to say? I mean, yeah, I mean, we have KU basketball camping on Twitter every single home game. All right, guys, it's time. Send your pictures in of students that are sitting during the timeouts so that we can shame all of you, I've never.
And for the record, KU basketball camping has also gotten weaker in the last several years.
It has.
But KU basketball camping is still better here than any other program in the country because everybody actually has to sit here for 6 days on end to get their camping spot. Whereas other schools, they show it for like 1 or 2 big games a year.
Oh, but you don't sit outside. You don't sit in a tent. That's not camping. You don't camp inside Allen Fieldhouse. Shut up. That's what other student bodies of other universities are saying.
Mark Few, I think, would be interesting. Sorry, side note. Mark Few would be interesting. I don't think he would come here because I think he's on the back half of his coaching career and he's got a good gig. It's got to be a guy that's younger, that's looking to advance in program.
Nate Oates, but
Nate Oates would be fun. I just personally, as a KU fan, I have a really hard time with it not being someone with the Kansas connection because that's what it's always been. And we've only had 8 head coaches in history, whereas all these other programs have more. So, this definitely blaming the fans was the beginning of the end for Cal. Happened to him at Kentucky last year. We saw, Coach Leipold's wife supposedly call out the fan base for football last year, and that didn't go well. You can call. I have no problem with calling a fan base out if they're underperforming on their end of the bargain. But if you're going to do that, you got to put out a winning product on the other side. So that's something to talk about. Mark Few is old, starting to sound old and raspy, just like Austin. Yeah, Austin has
Shut up.
screamed a lot over
You
this
be
last
quiet,
week
John.
with frustration. He's still blaming the Super Bowl loss for some of that voice.
Yeah, well, and I've had a cold for like the past week,
Yeah.
so I'm getting
Jayhawk edits. I'm interested in your
taking
thoughts
so
of which
much
players
medicine
with
lately.
eligibility. Yeah, this would be a fun one too. Looking at the
Diggy
roster, let's
Coy.
go through this. Guys that have eligibility. Diggy did say that if that stuff goes through the way that it's supposed to, he's all for coming back, and I'm totally
Ready to
fine
run
with
him
that.
back.
I don't think he's taking a roster spot away from any. But of the guys that can return, obviously you got Flory, and the way he's played as of late, I think it's more likely he's back. David Coit being one. Griffin is eligible. El Marco, obviously. Jamari McDowell, Raquise Passmore. I honestly, most of these guys I would take. To me, it's AJ and Rylan are the two that I'm not sure. I don't think Rylan is a bad one to bring back because of the play style he can bring. I'm not interested in AJ Store coming back because there's just no point. We're not going to play the way AJ needs to play to be effective. So why? So I'm good with him leaving. But I'm okay bringing most everybody back, and I think the reason I am is because we've never seen a Bill Self team turn over so frequently and be successful the next season. He's always been successful with returning guys that understand how to play. So Diggy coming back, El Marco coming back, I think both those guys have a strong chance of being vocal leaders on the team, even with a guy like Darren Peterson coming in. I think Flory's back for sure. Jamari's back unless he wants to go get a chance to play. So I'm good with that. I'm super high on Raquise Passmore's ceiling. I think he's the next Ochai Abaji for us. So I'm definitely big on him coming back. Outside of that, Store and AJ and Ryland. I think you can replace Ryland with somebody similar, or do you just let Jamari McDowell be Ryland Griffin next year?
I think McDowell's gone.
Really? I think if he was gone, he would have left already. Why would you redshirt if you weren't going to leave?
Because this year, going into this season, we thought, oh, we're so stacked and there's just no room for him, but his time is next year. And now we're in a point where, wow, we were dead wrong. We probably could have used him, but we're not going to burn his red shirt, all this late in the season. And next year, while a lot of these guys are going to be gone, it's not looking so great for next year. I mean, yeah, we have some great talented freshmen coming in, but the talented freshmen are the guys that are going to be honestly getting more minutes than Jamari McDowell. I didn't see a huge. I talked about earlier. I talked about KJ and Dewan not really changing over the last couple of years. Jamari McDowell is the same type of guy. He's not going to change a whole lot, especially with him sitting out a year. I just don't see it from Jamari McDowell. I like the kid. I really do. I think that he is a classic case of, man, I love Kansas. I really do. But I think I want to test the waters, see what else I can find, and see if I can have a bigger impact on a different program. I would be fine with Jamari McDowell leaving. I would be fine with AJ Store leaving. Ryland Griffin is a big question mark. I would say Ryland Griffin is someone that, man, once he just gets comfortable, I mean, we saw that he could shoot lights out when he was with Bama. So why not be able to do it for Kansas? I don't fully understand where the disconnect is there. Next year, maybe all it is he just needs to be in the system a little bit longer. I don't know. But I think if we kept him as simply, hey, you're a shooter and nothing else, he can even come off the bench. I don't care. I mean, we've got talented guys coming in. Bryson Tiller and Darren Peterson are going to be lights out. So I'm excited for that. I feel like next year there is a little bit of a glimmer of hope that next year has the potential to be an electric season, kind of like, I mean, there's a mixture of guys that have been in, but it's a lot of young blood, and I'm ready for it.
Athletically talented too. Like Flory, we know could be a monster. Darren Peterson, fantastic. El Marco is an explosive athlete, and if he fully recovers from his knee, I think he's going to be right up there as an explosive athlete. Bryson Tiller, great athleticism, long. Samis Calderon, I don't know how much he's going to play necessarily, but he's a good 6'8" wing. I think you just need a good experienced 5-man that's that 6'10" to 7-foot range that is a defensive prowess, good pick setter, can kind of be like what Tarek Black was for Joel Embiid. I think that addition of Tarek Black that year was a perfect pairing with Joel Embiid, and then you had Jamari Traylor coming up behind him. I always referred to those guys as the Bruise brothers when Jamari and Tarek shared the court. But I think that's what you need next year to pair with Flory, assuming Flory's back. But yeah, to fully answer Jayhawk at his question, I'm good with bringing most of the guys back because those are guys that aren't playing right now anyway and not having as much impact. So there's going to be a lot more opportunity. Not having DeJuan, KJ, and Hunter opens the door to so much possibility next year of options because you're not stuck with anything other than trying to feature Darren Peterson with Flory Badunga as your Devon Dotson, Udoka Azubuike combo of sorts. So I'm good with that. I think you definitely got to hit the transfer portal for one, maybe two, a big man and a solid shooting wing. Again, I wish we would have gone out and instead of AJ Storr, we tried everything possible to get Kobe Bray because he's just shooting lights out for Kentucky this year. One of the best 3-point shooters in the country for sure. Other thoughts on Ross? I have one thing I want to get, one more thing I want to talk about, but yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we mentioned it before, but I think last episode, but LeBaron Philon, dude, he's balling out.
He would have been great.
God, I'm so mad that he left. That was a tough pill to swallow when he transferred out, and now he's kicking butt, man. I would love to have him back. I don't know. I feel crazy, though. I feel crazy talking about AJ Storr can go. I mean, the guy is so talented, but yeah, he's done nothing. I mean, Austin, am I crazy for saying AJ Storr, see you later, never knew you?
No, not at all. I mean, we were kind of talking about it like right before the season, like, okay, who's going to be the one player that's going to step it up and be the difference maker? You know, like Remy Martin, for example. I said AJ Storr, and then I think a couple of you guys were like, yeah, I don't know about AJ Storr. And here we are. So
Spencer was very much that AJ Storr was going to be in the doghouse all year and would completely disappoint us. And he has. Now, the funny thing is, as much as this season, as we've been saying for the last 55 minutes, that the season's dead and it's time to bury this team, honestly, it really doesn't matter what happens the next 2 weeks because if this team figures out a way to flip the light on in March, I don't expect this team to go very far in March, which is the last thing I want to get into. But theoretically, Storr could go off. He could have a Malik Newman, Remy Martin effort level and do something. But to me, he's the only guy, unless Zeke just goes scorched earth the next six weeks and is going like 5 of 8 from 3, and Hunter is at least salvageable in the defensive end, and Flory gets back to what he was doing. I think this team has a chance to make some noise. But to me, that's the last thing I want to end with you guys here is obviously, even though we are kind of saying the season's dead and over now, there's still a handful of games left they have to play. They got to go into Big 12 tournament, and this is going to be weird again that we'll see Kansas probably on the first day of the Big 12 tournament, the way things are going, because there ain't no way they're going and getting a win at BYU in less than 48 hours. I just don't see that happening. Now, I say that, but if they do have their team bonding experience today or tomorrow somehow and it clicks, could be interesting. But I don't see them coming out on top of that. So what is the ceiling for this team? What would you be satisfied with? Do you even care where the season finishes up, Big 12 tournament style, NCAA tournament? How deep is this team actually going to go?
Look, I'm going to say it. The absolute ceiling. I mean, certainly we have to look at how the bracket plays out. Absolute ceiling to me is 1 win. Round of 32 loss is what I really think the absolute ceiling is for this team. It's just sad. But this year, more than any other year, I can see yet again a round 1 loss, a round of 64 loss. And at that point, I got to shut the lights off because we're done and it's over, and get this team out of here and just focus on next year because I can't with us anymore. So that was my little, you guys know I like to play with my lights a little bit. I'm shutting the lights off on this team. I give them 0 wins in the March Madness tournament, regardless of our opponent. But I really hope that's just not the emotion talking. I think it's a little bit of analysis too.
Austin, we got 6 games left. At BYU, home against Oklahoma State, at Colorado, home against Texas Tech, at Houston, home versus Arizona to finish the year. What's this team's record the final 6 games?
Oh boy. Well, I think BYU's a loss. I mean, I've been dreading that game for quite a while. Actually.
I can't wait to see the line, because if KU is somehow a favorite, you have or is like -1.5, you have to take BYU plus 1.5. Whatever BYU, if BYU is the underdog, you have to take them if you're betting it.
Yeah, so I mean BYU. I mean, you got. I would say chalk up an L for that game. I'd be surprised if KU actually won that. And then you get what, Oklahoma State right after that. Yeah, I mean that should be a win. Oklahoma State hasn't been very good this season.
Watch them just come out
and then
that
after
game
that
for a win on the road, just because.
And then Colorado on the road. Very scared about that game, even though Colorado has been terrible this season. Now, granted, they did beat UConn earlier in the season, but they just haven't been great this year in Big 12 play. I'm very scared about that game. And then you get Texas Tech. Very scared about that game. I've been talking to you guys about that it could be a loss. Now, Texas Tech's been pretty good this year. But the thing with Tech, and listen, I grew up a Texas Tech fan, and I know how things go with them. Usually they don't play very well in Lawrence. And I think the last time, and the only time I think really that they've won in Lawrence was in, 2017, 2018, something like that. I think it was like the year before they made it to the national championship game against Virginia. That was the year they went to the Elite Eight, I think, whenever they beat KU. So that's going to be a tough game, but I mean, I wouldn't be too shocked if KU won that. At Houston, forget about that game. I don't even want to talk about it. And then you get Arizona, who, I find to be very intriguing because they didn't start off the year hot, and now they're just like on a roll right now. And we've been undefeated in senior night games for like the past 40 years or something.
Oh no, not another streak. No. That streak's coming.
It's over. That streak's over. Caleb Love could be bad, but Arizona is good enough to win that.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty good. So, I mean, I would just say right now that that's a win for Kansas just because it's on senior night. But, hey, you never know. And then
real quick, Anthony, you are 100% right. This team does nothing the first 6 minutes of the game. They have to come out. I mean, the exact same thing happened to Utah that it's happened to every other road game. They come out, they look slow, they look tired, they look unenergetic, like they don't care. Utah smacks them in the mouth right away. Granted, they fought hard in the second half. KU's defense was really good in the second half, but they couldn't rebound. But yeah, KU has to come out of the gate swinging. We haven't really seen that truly since the Duke game. But yeah, so I have this team going 3-3 down the stretch. I have losing to BYU. I have them losing at Houston and losing to Arizona. So if they finish 3-3 on the season down the stretch, they'd go 20-11 on the season. Again, disappointing loss or disappointing season. KU should be unranked coming up Monday, honestly, whether they win or lose Saturday. Yeah. Or I guess tomorrow. By the time we see this, we should know their rank. Ken Palm will still have them top 15 somehow. I don't get it. But I want to throw this out there. Let's say KU goes 2-4 down the stretch, or 1-5 somehow, finishes below 20 games. Would it be crazy to say that this team could actually miss the NCAA tournament? Because that would put them in the bottom half of the Big 12. Now they could go to the Big 12 tournament, which they're not going to. But that was something I was thinking about, and I hate to bring that up, but that is a possibility that if they win less than 20 games, I still think the committee would put them in because it's Kansas. But if they finish, that'd be 10-10 in Big 12 play, and you've got teams floating around them. Yeah, I think there's a better chance of them missing the NCAA tournament than there is of them winning the Big 12. But I was thinking about that. That would be rock bottom. If it's not rock bottom already, somehow missing the NCAA tournament for the first time in like 70,000 years would be absolute rock bottom.
I think I would legitimately cry because I'm not ready for that conversation. I immediately answered. I'm like, yeah, it'd be crazy because they're not going to miss the tournament. I mean, they're in good shape even with this loss. I think if you're talking 1-5 in their next 6 games, yikes, we're talking like, what are we talking? 11 seed? My God. I just can't
this
see
team's
this.
this is a 5 or a 6 seed team that's getting bounced in the first round as the slight favorite, in my opinion.
Yeah.
This is the 12-5 upset.
It is 100%. I think the day that we miss the tournament is the day that, I don't know, maybe I need to find a new team. No, I'm not going to find a new team.
There's another question. If they somehow did miss the tournament or they lose first round exit, do you think it's more likely Bill Self goes out after? Well, I mean, he's not going out. Nah, forget that, because
I just can't see Bill going out as a loser.
He wants to coach Darren Peterson next year.
Yeah, of course he does. But Darren Peterson might be the very last star-studded dude, one and done guy that he coaches. I fully believe that he could be the very last. We'll see.
Yeah, we're gonna have that conversation later too about how do we retool and refocus how we do recruiting moving forward, because I think we got to get back to, you got to go after high school recruits and develop them, and then have a nice blended mix of one solid veteran that you can pull in the recruiting on the transfer portal that's a good role player, but not a star player, because the star player's not coming here and doing anything. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Hire a GM. That is like the first step we need to take this offseason or after this season. Find a guy that can come in and take the role of a GM and, look over all the recruits and, who they're trying to bring in, all this stuff. I mean, I'm just saying, I think it could be a difference maker. So
I agree.
Hire a GM. I don't know who, but I think it'd benefit.
I have some ideas of guys that could potentially fulfill that role depending what they're looking for, but it's got to be someone that's very recruiting focused, that is hungry to find talent and has the connections, guys that are in player personnel development, scouting. If you guys have been Turgeon, I don't know, he's about done. It's got to be someone that's young in the AAU circuit that's around. And there's a guy, I was going to text him about this earlier, but Braden Turner put out on Twitter earlier, for those that know the local Kansas connection, KJ Pritchard, son of Kevin Pritchard. He's been in the Indiana Pacers front office for a while as a scout for his dad. And KJ is very tied into the basketball scene recruiting side. So I think he'd be an interesting one that Braden put out there for sure. But yeah, it's got to be someone that is very in tune with player scouting and talent acquisition and has a keen eye for finding talent, because that's what Bill Self has typically been really good at, is finding that 3 or 4 star guy that's a little under recruited, and by year 3 he's a stud. And that's where he's won most of his national championships off of.
Yeah,
I think you're right. Yeah, if he doesn't get to another national championship the next 2 or 3 years, yeah, because again, we said his coaching style has changed. He is not as, he got a technical last night, but he is not as fired up with the way he coaches as the way he used to be. So I think that's playing effect. Stan, I don't disagree with you on this, though. I don't think you young guys want. I personally, I 100% agree with that. I can't hire anybody to come work for me that is younger than 25 that wants to actually show up for work. So I definitely agree with that. But from what I've seen with KJ is an exception.
No, I'm kidding. I can't do
the
that.
Pacers have recruited well. Hey, they got Johnny Furphy. They found Johnny Furphy in the draft. How different would the season be if Furphy came back? I don't think.
Oh my God, dude! That's a whole other podcast that we need to do. Is just talk about the impact
Kansas
of some
basketball
players
what
leaving.
ifs.
Yeah,
we'll go back previous seasons. What ifs? Guys left stayed. I keep going back to if Ben McLemore would have been eligible for the national championship team in 2012 if he didn't have to sit that year. Would that have been a difference maker enough against Kentucky, or would he have been as good as he was his true freshman season if he didn't have that year of development? But yeah, we can save that for another time, because we could sit here another hour doing
Super
that.
quick though, super quick. How many losses do we have on the season right now? Is it how many?
8. We're
8?
17-8 on the
Okay.
season.
If Furphy came back, give me the over under. I'll set the over under 3.5. In terms of like less, losses, turn those L's into W's. If Furphy came back, are you taking over under 3.5?
That's a good question. He does help the spacing. I think I'd still take the under, but I think he wins us 2 games. Because
Okay.
I'm not saying he'd be an upgrade over Ryan Griffin necessarily. I mean, one is in the NBA and the other's not. But Furphy being in the system and the length he has, I would have imagined that in the offseason he would have developed pretty well.
Me too.
With strength and conditioning, and would have come out and been a good factor. But now Furphy had a lot of his struggles his freshman season too, defensively. But I feel like that would have gotten better. And so, yeah, could KU have pulled out the Houston game with his athleticism? Would they have shut down Baylor? I think there's 2 wins right there. I still think we lose against Creighton. We still lose against Mizzou. Probably win against Utah. So, yeah, maybe. I think I'd take the under. I think maybe 3 wins.
3? Okay.
I don't think
I'm right there
it'd
with
be
you.
4. Because you look at the games we've lost, would Furphy have been enough of a difference maker? Because the problem still exists of the lack of effort in the post. I think
You've been a great shooter. He would have been a great
shooter. Again,
another
what if we can play later is if you swapped Hunter out for Zuby.
Oh
statistically, Hunter's having a better season statistically, but Zuby has taken on a strong role for St. John's, and he plays with fight and energy and strength that Hunter doesn't. And I'm just curious how that would look. But same with Ernest Uday. Uday's not as good offensively, but he brings an energy defensively. So pairing him with Flory could be interesting. But again, we can say that for another day. I think that would be fun. We'll do a what if. But yeah, that's all I got. We've been at it over an hour now. So thank you guys so much that have joined us. Obviously, even though we're putting this season to bed figuratively and literally, there's still 2.5 weeks left of the season, 6 games left. We're probably still going to talk some more Kansas basketball because all it'll take is Kansas beating BYU on the road Tuesday for us to be fully back.
We're back. We're back.
So I think, yeah, that's all it'll take. And then we'll depressingly lose at home to Oklahoma State with 58 to 57. No. Bryce Thompson will hit the game winner. Of all people. That would be depressing. But yeah, we'll wrap up there. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you guys in the comment section. It's all again. I love doing these lives. We've been starting to do more of these, and it's a lot of fun having you guys show up in the comment section and do this alongside with us. It's a lot of fun. So we'd love to keep doing more of that. Got a lot of exciting things in the works for the podcast over the next few months. If I can get a few guests lined up that I'm working desperately on to get on here. So I think I got a lot of fun things in store. So again, if you haven't done so yet, hit that like and subscribe button below. Make sure you go give us a follow on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok so that when I can announce some of these things, you're coming back for it. Let's go get guests. John Grove. Yes, there are some guests. I have some things in the works, trying to get a couple of the KU football players that are potentially playing in the NFL next season to come on. So I have some stuff in the works there. Have some other things in the background that we're working on. Just got to get it scheduled. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for another potential meltdown next week if we go 0-2. But yeah, other than that, guys, that's all I got. We say we RIP.
RIP. Rock chalk.
Rock chalk.